Hi guys, and welcome back to Exotics of the World TV. Now in this episode we are going to be discussing the basic care for the giant African bullfrog. Known for their impressive size and unique personalities, these amphibians make very interesting pets. So without further ado, let's jump straight into the video, and as always, please enjoy the content. Now, where do giant African bullfrogs come from? These massive frogs are endemic to sub-Saharan Africa, where they can typically be found in savannas, grasslands, and temporary ponds, especially during the rainy season. They absolutely thrive in warm, humid, wet environments. So creating a similar setup is going to be essential in the general care for this species. So first off, let's talk about the size of these absolutely massive beasties. So guys, this is Bert. So he is our giant African bullfrog, and as you can see, I need two hands to hold him, all right? So they do get quite large. Oh, he's a bit of a wriggler. So in terms of actual length, these guys can get roughly anywhere between 8 to 10 inches fully grown. However, some individuals can exceed that, and they can get even larger. I don't think Bert's quite happy with me. I might have to pop him down. I'm not sure if he paid that up, but he kind of farted on my hand. So I'm going to go put him back. And I'm back. So I just like to add like a little caveat to that as well. Before handling Bert, I made sure that my hands were very clean and wet them as well. So this is just going to reduce the likelihood of damaging these amphibians. Now with that out of the way, let's talk about the minimum enclosure size. So for a giant African bullfrog, we would typically recommend an enclosure no smaller than 4 foot long by 2 foot deep. Now, in terms of height, you can kind of go how high you really want with this. We would say as a minimum, kind of go around about 60 centimeters tall or 2 foot tall, there or thereabouts. Now, you might read online that they're absolutely fine in smaller enclosures and they're sit and ambush predators, that type of thing. Now, with Bert, we don't think that's true. Maybe Bert's an outlier, but Bert will move to various parts of the enclosure throughout the day. So he's got a partial bit of water in there, so it's kind of like a third water and then 2/3 land. So he'll move about in different spots. Like granted, he doesn't move that far. The fact he does express the will to move in different areas of the enclosure would really suggest to us that 4 foot is kind of like a bare minimum. So moving on to our life support system now. So with bullfrogs, we do recommend giving them a UVB source. So a bare minimum of kind of like a Ferguson Zone 1 bulb should absolutely be sufficient. Now, again, this is going to depend how far away the bulb is going to be from the actual frog. So just have a look on the back of your UVB bulb and it should give you an idea at your UVI where it's going to be at how far away. And also just a caveat is the LED lighting. Now, LED lighting is currently not essential like your UVB is. However, we still definitely would recommend providing it for your frog. So not only is it beneficial for us in terms of like viewing pleasure and stuff, it's really good if you want to put live plants in there, and it's also fantastic for your amphibian's overall vision. And just like the UVB bulb, because it emits light, we recommend a 12 hours on and 12 hours off cycle. This is basically just to mimic that day and night cycle for the animal. Now let's talk about heating. So with the bullfrog, you don't want them super warm. So we would say kind of like a basking area of around about 30 degrees. Again, make sure the basking area is fairly small. You don't want a wide basking spot because you're going to need a decent thermal gradient for this species. So small basking spot. This can be achieved by using smaller spot bulbs and bulbs that have got more of like a focused beam in kind of one area. Examples of basking bulbs that we tend to use in here are things like halogens, mini halogens, and the intense ranges of bulbs as well. So things like the intense Exoterra basking spot and White Python's new basking spot also. So your basking, you want it around about 30 degrees or so. Warm side of the enclosure, you want it kind of like 29 to around about 27, 26, thereabouts. And then at the cool side, you want it around about 24 to 20 degrees. Now, because these guys are kind of like on the equator, you don't really want it dropping anything lower than 18 degrees. So room temperature is typically fine. A lot of people will recommend 20 degrees. Now, 20 degrees is a safe option. We would say anywhere from 18 to 20, you're going to be good for nighttime temperatures. If you are super concerned about it, you can always get some sort of like nighttime heating. So things like a ceramic heat emitter that'll just heat the ambient temperature and stop the animal from getting super cold. Moving on to thermostats. So these are always coupled with our heat sources. So any heat source should always have a thermostat that is controlling it. This is going to stop the animal and the enclosure in general overheating, potentially killing the animal. Now, there are three kinds of thermostats. So you have your on-off stat, which is perfect for things like heat mats, but in this instance, we're not really going to use them. You've got your pulse proportional, which is perfect for your ceramic heat emitter, and your dimming thermostat. Now, any light emitting heat source should always be used in conjunction with a dimming thermostat. Let's now talk about humidity for this species. Now, humidity is super crucial. So in the wild, it's going to go up and it's going to go down, okay? So we would say kind of like a safe range would be around about 50 to 80%. There is absolutely fine. If it's going up and down, absolutely perfect. If it's edging more towards like 90 percentile, again, absolutely fine, as long as it's coming down. Now, if the animal does want to hydrate, it's going to go into the water section that we would always recommend having alongside this species. Now, there are really good ways on how to maintain humidity inside the enclosure. Number one is a really nice, thick, deep substrate. Now, we would recommend the substrate be kind of like a minimum thickness of the frog. So you could kind of like paint over the frog and you wouldn't know if it was there. Another way that you can maintain the humidity is by adding sphagnum moss and also leaf litter. Now, leaf litter is really good for multiple reasons, not only for your humidity, but also if you're doing bioactive setups and you have things like isopods in there. So your springtails, woodlice, that type of thing. So it's going to create a nice little refuge for your isopods and also a decent food source. But mainly what we're talking about now is it's going to help the substrate lock in that much needed humidity. And we've already kind of touched on about how deep we want the substrate, but what kind of substrate are we going to be using? So giant African bullfrogs can be found in a wide variety of habitats. So in the hobby, you could just use things like cocoa fiber or any like moisture absorbent substrate. Again, if you're doing a bioactive setup, a good combination that I would personally recommend using would be a mixture of the Arcadia Earth Mix and the ProRep BioLife Forest. I think these two together work absolutely perfectly. Now, let's talk about a fairly controversial topic surrounding giant African bullfrogs. So, a question we often get asked is, can I give it things like chicks and all these bits and bobs? Yes, you can. However, in captivity, you don't want to be kind of giving them a lot of this. In captivity, we would typically recommend feed more of like kind of like an insect-based diet, and then like once every week to a month or so, maybe give it some kind of whole prey, so like a mouse, a rat, or a chick. Now, if you are noticing that the frog is getting really fat, just withhold the feeding. Now, these frogs can go for a very long time without food. Now, you might think, oh my God, that's absolutely horrible. But if you keep feeding your frog, you are eventually, unfortunately, going to kill it. So there are also other issues that can arise by overfeeding. So a common one that we see in white shrew frogs when they've been overfed is they develop kind of like a fatty sheet kind of like over their eyes. Same can be said for giant African bullfrogs. So we would say if you're going to do it in like percentage terms, we would say like a good like 70% of their diet should consist of like insects and bits and bobs, and then the remaining should be made up with whole prey. So items that you can feed, I've mentioned a couple, so like chicks, rats, mice. You can also feed hamsters, frogs' legs as well. So I know it sounds absolutely crazy, but in the wild they will eat other amphibians. You must always as well make sure that all of the live food is supplemented. So you can use a broad spectrum supplement. That's absolutely fine to use. Just make sure it's coated and dusted on all of your live food. Giant African bullfrogs will also go into a dormancy period that's called brumation. So they'll do this when it drops a little bit colder in the wild, and they'll kind of go into a stasis kind of sleep thing. Now, when it warms up a little bit more, that's when they'll become reanimated, they'll be more active, looking for food and also looking for mates. Let's talk about decor and decoration. So, I mean, if you're going through the bioactive kind of side of things, it's going to be fairly difficult to maintain something arguably decent. I know it's quite difficult for ours because Bert absolutely just tramples over, rips stuff up. He's a very unforgiving frog. It is our Bert. So we would say if you are wanting to go through like the bioactive kind of route, just look for plants like pothos and other really hardy plants that can take an absolute hammering. And that has been enough from me. So thank you guys very much for watching all the way through to the end. If you did like the video, make sure that you give us a like, share and subscribe. And also click that bell icon and then you'll be notified when we release new videos. But anyway, that's been me. Thank you very much and we'll see you in the next one. See you later, Ducky Bobs.